Hello.
Well, hello. My name is Jennifer Childs. I am the producing artistic director for 1812 Productions.
And I'm Scott Greer, and you're welcome.
And as we say each week, usually at this time we would be gathering in the theater together, but as we cannot do that, we are gathering around our dining room table and talking about comedy. So, Scott Greer, what are you, I guess I should say what I'm drinking.
Yeah, what are you drinking?
What I'm drinking. Save the comic one for later. I'm just drinking white wine, but I have ice in it because I'm like 87 years old. Okay.
Well, in honor of this week's theme, I am drinking a gin and tonic, also known as a Goyische Schnapps.
So cheers.
Cheers.
Cheers, indeed. And welcome. Before we get started, I do have one announcement to make. Because we have guests tonight, and as we've learned over the past couple of weeks, we over-prepare. We don't leave enough time for our guests. We talk too much ourselves. So,
right.
But I do need to say that on June 8th, Monday, June 8th, Evento du Schmancy, 1812's gala fundraiser is moving online. It is pay what you choose. You can choose to pay nothing. You can choose to pay $3 million. Anything within that spectrum, it's up to you, but it's going to be super, super fun. We're going to be hosting it here. We're going to have a red carpet in our living room. And we just announced this week that Marty Mascaline of WHYY's Radio Times is going to be one of our guests. So there's more secret surprise guests to come, but check it out if you haven't. And
what is your t-shirt?
My t-shirt. Thank you, Scott, for teeing that up. So this t-shirt, if people can see, is of course an 1812 t-shirt, but this is the very first 1812 t-shirt that we ever had made. You can see that we could not afford to even have productions put on it. It just is 1812, and we also could not afford any size other than extra large. So this is very large on me, but yeah.
I am wearing an It's My Party t-shirt, which was from the Women in Comedy Project, which I wasn't even allowed to audition for.
There we go.
So
there's that. But just a couple of fun facts. First of all, where the 1812 logo came from, I actually carved this out of an eraser. When we were one of those gum erasers, I carved it out, and we would stamp. We put it on an ink stamp and then stamp, and that's how we made our envelopes. That's how we made our letterhead for much longer than we should have, because we didn't understand the technology that is the computer.
They hadn't heard about the printing press.
That's right, exactly. And I also want to share, for those of you who may not know, that the name 1812 comes from 1812 Pine Street, which is an address. However, when I figured this next little fun fact out, I was really sorry that I didn't know that sooner, because it would have been a much better story for why we named it 1812. The first reference of laughter in the Bible is in Genesis chapter 18, verse 12. I am not lying. It is when Sarah is being visited by an angel and is told that even at an advanced age, she is going to have a baby. And she says,
and Sarah laughed to herself, saying, after I have become old, shall I have pleasure, my Lord being old also?
We should note that this is the first instance of laughter in the Bible, not the first instance of a joke.
There were many punch-ups afterwards.
Yeah, exactly. But yes. But we bring that up because today we are talking about the history of Jewish humor in America, or as we call it,
humor
in America. And, in 1979, Time magazine noted that while Jews made up only 3% of the population in the country, they made up 80% of the professional comedians working at the time. And so we just like to read just a little list. If there were no Jews in comedy, we would have no Mel Brooks, no Woody Allen, no Jerry Seinfeld.
No Joan Rivers, no Milton Berle, no Sophie Tucker.
No Jack Benny, Don Rickles, or Fanny Brice.
No Sid Caesar, Lenny Bruce, or Mort Saul.
No Roseanne Barr, Goldie Hawn, Belle Barth, Bette Midler, Toady Fields, Madeline Kahn, Gilda Radner, B. Arthur.
Andy Kaufman, Rodney Dangerfield, Robert Klein, Jackie Mason, Gene Wilder, Buddy Hackett, Burt Lahr, Tom Lehrer, Shelley Berman. No Rob Reiner.
No Carl Reiner, no Richard Lewis, Albert Brooks, Howard Stern, Louis Black, Larry David, Judy Gold, Sarah Silverman, Neil Simon.
You'd have Martin, but no Lewis.
Costello, but no Abbott.
Allen, but no Burns.
Mira, but no Stiller.
Actually, she converted.
Really?
Yeah.
Oh, good for her. R.I.P.
No Marx Brothers.
No Three Stooges.
No Nichols Gourmet.
No Mel Blanc.
Which means no Bugs Bunny.
No Julie Kavner or Hank Azaria.
Which means no Simpsons.
No Jack Klugman or Tony Randall.
Which means no Odd Couple.
No Christopher Guest or Harry Shearer.
Which means no Spinal Tap or Winfrey Guffman.
No Sacha Baron Cohen.
Which means no Borat.
No Fonzie, Potsy, Ralph Malph on Happy Days.
Which means no Richie Cunningham would have had no friends.
No Pee Wee Herman.
Which means we won't go into that now.
No Billy Crystal.
No Sammy Davis Jr.
No Billy Crystal doing Sammy Davis Jr.
And no Jon Stewart.
Is that all? No.
No.
In fact, it would also mean that we didn't have either of our guests today. And we're going to bring them to the stage screen now. First of all, you may know him as our stage manager for the last 17 years, but also as that witty comedian from the Catskills, Uncle Shotzi. Please welcome Tom Shotkin to the stage.
Thank you. Thank you.
Hello.
Hello, Shotzi. What are you drinking?
I am drinking a Manhattan.
Ooh, classy.
Yeah.
Are you on the right broadcast?
No, I'm not. I know. It's a very goyish drink, but that's all right.
I just meant that you're way classier than us. But
Oh, I see. I wouldn't get it.
that's true too. How was your golf game today?
Fantastic.
And our
Good handicap. Is that a thing? I don't know.
Yes, I don't know.
two people who don't play golf talking about golf.
Nope.
It's going very well. Our next guest, if you've been to theater in Philadelphia in the past, 15 years, you've certainly seen her on one of those stages, and you saw her on our stage, I can't remember how many years ago, but she played Gilda Radner in our production of Bunny Bunny. Please welcome Leah Walton to the suite.
Hey.
Hello.
What are you drinking?
I'm drinking a very goyish drink, a beer. When I was growing up, I knew a lot of Jews and they never drank beer. So, I'm a fully assimilated. So,
Welcome aboard.
Yes, indeed. Well, and I guess that's kind of where we want to start is just with a conversation about sort of your understanding of what Jewish humor is, your experience with it, when you kind of realize like, oh, this is what Jewish humor is and what it has to do with me or not. But I don't know, Shots, if you want to start.
Yeah, I mean, when I was growing up, being part of a Jewish family, and Leah can attest to this, it's like that was the Jewish humor right there. I mean, our family is funny and from New York and just all of that stuff. We just laughed a lot. But for me growing up, I felt like there were certain movies and filmmakers that had a big influence on me. Mel Brooks and Woody Allen. Scandal noted, Woody Allen. But his movies growing up, Annie Hall, Manhattan, Sleeper, Take the Money and Run, they just killed me. And quick story. So this is how I realized that this stuff actually did make sense and did relate to my life. Watched Annie Hall through high school, through college. And in fact, in college, I was invited by a friend to a Christmas dinner with her family. So we did not have Christmas dinners, obviously. So this is exciting to go to a real Christmas dinner. I think it was my first one. And we're sitting around the table. We're eating ham. It was dynamite ham, by the way. And we're drinking, and her family is lovely, very waspish, but very lovely. And I look down at the end of the table, and there's her grandmother, elderly woman, kind of looking at me, very friendly, but looking at me like, who is this person? And then I had this epiphany, and I don't know, for people who remember Annie Hall, there's a scene where he goes to Grammy Hall's dinner, Easter dinner, in Chippewa Falls, I believe it is. And Grammy Hall looks down the table at Woody Allen, and we see him through her eyes, which is as a chassid with the hair and the hat and all of that. And I was like, oh my God, that's me. I'm Albie Singer right now. Kate, it's me. I'm in the movie. It was this beautiful moment of kind of art imitating life, imitating art. And I thought, this is what it's all about. So
That's awesome. What about you, Leah?
yeah, I mean, just like Shots was saying, like humor was big. My father, I didn't mention this, but like when we were chatting earlier, my father used to have me do this thing. And I guess it was someone stand up and he'd be like, do the thing. And it's like two different characters. And the guy says like, doctor, I got a problem. And I think I would have to be the doctor character. And I'd be like, what's the problem? And he'd be like, my wife, she thinks she's a vacuum cleaner. And then he'd make me say like, well, why don't you take her to a psychiatrist? And then he'd get the punchline, which was what? And use a broom? So that was what we did in my house. But I do remember like being a kid and not getting a lot of Jewish humor and people grown up watching oh God, what's his name? Why am I not thinking of it now? And he would do the whole stand up about like people who name their Jewish kids not Jewish names.
Oh, right? Jackie Mason. Yeah.
Thank you. And it's like, why would you name your kid like Tiffany Rubenstein? And I like didn't get it. I did not. I was like, of course you want your name to be Tiffany. Like every cool girl name in school is Tiffany. And then I watched it again just a few years ago, and I was like, oh my God, this is effing hilarious. And I feel like maybe that like otherness that I didn't like when I was younger, I'm like, give it to me now. I'm like, yes, as different as I can be.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
You?
Well, yeah. I mean, my first awareness of, first of all, until I was about 7 years old, I thought I was Jewish. I grew up in a not at all religious household. We never went to church. I had no religious instruction, indoctrination. And in second grade, my teacher, Mrs. Horvath, asked, well, who's going to be out for Rosh Hashanah? And I was like, it just dawned on me. I'm like, I will. I'm Jewish. And so my mother picks me up, and my teacher's like, oh, Mrs. Greer, I didn't know you were Jewish. And she's like, well, we're not. And we get in the car, and she says, why did you tell her that we're Jewish? And I said, well, I know we're not Christian. And so, but I mean, yes, Woody Allen, scandal noted, for sure, was chapter and verse, like a comedy Bible. But Mel Brooks, too, in some ways, I got even deeper into, I mean, I've probably seen Young Frankenstein 300 times. Mm-hmm. And in the early 80s, when HBO would only show one movie over and over and over again, History of the World, I watched just ad infinitum, and of course Blazing Saddles, where he did the Yiddish Indian. Like, so I worship those guys.
Yeah. As somebody who's been a student of comedy for a really long time, this is one of my favorite stories and yes, Mel Brooks, yes, to a lesser extent, Woody Allen. I came along to Woody Allen a little bit later, but like the Marx Brothers and the street, like all of that old vaudeville, Sophie Tucker, Fanny Bryce, all of that. Mm-hmm. And I was doing this project where I was working with this theater historian, Eddie Friedfeld, and he was a member of the Friars Club, and so he had taken me to lunch at the Friars Club. And the Friars Club, for those who don't know, is kind of like this old social club for comics and entertainers that has been around for 100 years. And you mostly see it in the roast.
Yeah,
the
roast.
The Friars Club roast of XYZ. And you go, and it's like you can feel the comedy history as you walk in. And every room is named after a great, there's the Billy Crystal Bar, and there's the Frank Sinatra Ballroom, and the Chuck Barris Closet. Just whatever that's right, but it's true. Yeah. Chuck Barris only got a closet out of it.
Yeah. The Buddy Hackett Ballet.
Yes. But so we were having the Frank Sinatra Ballroom. And we spent the day, we'd been talking about Mel Brooks and classic comedy and vaudeville and screwball comedy and all this stuff. And we were leaving, and I made a comment about my father, who is a Lutheran pastor. And Eddie stopped and he grabbed his chest and was like, I'm sorry, I keep forgetting that for a girl so Jewish, you're Lutheran. That was one of the nicest things that anyone has ever said to me. Because let me tell you, the list of Lutheran comedians, really short. It's really,
Yeah.
what's his
It
name?
stops after Martin Luther, I think. That's the first one. He tried to do 98 jokes at one time, and they didn't go over, and then 95. All right.
So, no, what's his name? It's like, what was it? Garrison Keillor.
Oh, Garrison Keillor, of course.
After Garrison Keillor.
That's
we're
right.
done. Anyway, let's get into some shtick. And we did a show several years ago called An Evening Without the Catskills, where we talked about Jewish humor and its roots. And these are just some of the pieces that were in there. Again, we'll have to have a part 2. But this first piece is not breaking down Jewish humor, but breaking down contemporary Judaism. And it is from comedian and former Daily Show host Jon Stewart in his essay, The New Judaism, from his book, Naked Pictures of Famous People. So.
Modern American Judaism can be broken down into 3 simple categories. First, Orthodox. Orthodox Jews, or as they are known in the Talmud, the really chosen ones, are committed to the idea that the entire Torah was dictated by God verbatim to Moses at Mount Sinai. Therefore, all the original Torah's laws must be obeyed as written. Other forms of Judaism dispute this claim, although it does explain certain passages in the first Torah, such as, I'm sorry, am I boring you? And what do you like better, Moses, Lord Almighty or big hoo-ha? Orthodox Jews observe a strict Sabbath, the separation of sexes during worship, and believe that Jackie Mason is the funniest man alive.
Conservative. Conservative Jews are Orthodox Jews who went co-ed, reportedly after one of their more influential members attended a mixer at Barnard. They generally believe that the Torah was passed down from God to Moses, but was edited or at least spell-checked first. The main difference between conservative and Orthodox Jews is summed up beautifully in conservative Rabbi Mishner's seminal work titled, Hey fellas, how about we take it down a notch? Conservatives believe that Woody Allen is the funniest man alive.
Reform. Reform Jews are the children of conservative Jews, or as they are sometimes known, Christians with curlier hair. They believe the Torah is very long and hard to read because it is written in a foreign language. They are not required to adhere to any strict religious doctrine, but are still able to take off work on at least 75% of all Jewish holidays. They believe Carrot Top is the funniest man alive.
So, to sum up some major differences between
Orthodox.
Conservative.
Reform.
They believe the Sabbath is
A day of worship.
A day of reflection.
Saturday.
dietary code,
Strict kosher.
Zabars.
Liposuction.
dream job,
A rabbi.
A doctor.
A VJ.
favorite music,
Klezmer.
Streisand.
Gospel.
homosexuality is
A sin.
homosexuality is
A sin, but oh, what they've done for Broadway theater.
homosexuality is
Something that happened at camp.
yay! Thank you, Jon Stewart. And I always say, and one of the kind of themes that what we're going to be talking about is that we laugh at this not because Jon Stewart is incredibly funny and it's very, very clever, but it is kind of a contemporary takeoff on a comic identity that has been cultivated over hundreds and thousands of years. And that's really what we're going to be looking at tonight. And I want to move on actually to the next kind of big section that we're going to do, which is from Tom Shotkin. And, you know, while Jon Stewart kind of breaks things down in that way and looks at comedic identity that way, there was a whole span of time in the Catskills where Jews who had worked very, very hard because many other resorts were restricted. The Catskills became a place that Jews could go and have vacations. And also it was a place that comics could work out new material now that vaudeville has kind of died. So another Jewish comic who sort of made a name for himself by delving into that Jewish identity was Billy Crystal. And I'm going to say goodbye to Leah. And bye. And we're going to say goodbye to us. And I'm going to turn things over to Tom Shotkin for a little piece of Billy Crystal's 700 Sundays, which is his memory of his time at the Catskills.
When it came time for us to take the one family trip that we would get to take together, there was really only one place for us to go: the Catskills. We jumped into the Belvedere, made 3 left turns, and headed north. I grabbed the camera and started taking pictures of the countryside on our way to the legendary Catskills, the only mountain range in the world that if Osama bin Laden was hiding there, somebody would say to him, "Oh, so you're single?" We got to Kutcher's, my first hotel. That huge pool, so much room for me to hang onto the side and pee. And they had this gigantic dining room. The energy was astounding. 1,000 Jews fighting over end cuts. And that week, there were things that totally changed my life. It's when I first rode a horse, becoming a real city slicker. I saw my parents taking mambo lessons in public. And I saw Wilt Chamberlain wearing the uniform of the Harlem Globetrotters. That's the team he played with the year before he came into the NBA. Wilt, a former bellboy at Kutcher's, was there playing with other pros in a basketball clinic. But on Saturday night in the Catskills, the comedian is king. Now, I'd never seen a comic in person before. Holding onto my pop's hand, we walk into the Kutcher's nightclub, and that's when I saw my very first comedian. He was introduced, the combo played him on, and there he was, in a spotlight, doing a funny walk, cigarette in one hand, looking so confident, almost regal. "Good evening, ladies and Jews. What a night. Oh, I had a rough night. I came home and found my wife in bed with my best friend. So I said, 'Lenny, I have to, but you?' My first rim shot. The combo on stage laughed. I saw them looking at each other. Somehow I thought that was so cool. It was all so exciting. This guy goes to the doctor. He says, 'Doc, I have 5 penises.' The doctor said, 'How do your pants fit?' He said, 'Like a glove.' Rim shot. Screams from the crowd. Mom and Dad look a little uncomfortable. I was giggling like crazy because he said penis on stage. Joel and Rip were going nuts. This little boy is playing with his testicles. He says, 'Mommy, are these my brains?' She says, 'Not yet.' I watched him prowl the stage like a panther in a sharkskin suit. His timing was unbelievable. He wore the audience down. The audience was 6 inches shorter when they left the show. And as I'm sitting there at 9 years old, watching that comic, I have this epiphany. I say to myself, I could never play baseball like Mickey Mantle, ever. But this, I could do. I memorized his act instantly. The next weekend, all the relatives were coming over to the house. There could be 35 or 40 of them sitting right there in the living room, which to me meant showtime. I took the comics act I had just seen, changed it just a little bit to suit my crowd. "Well, good evening, family of Jews. Boy, Grandpa had a rough day. I mean, rough. He came home and found Grandma in bed with Uncle Mac. He said, 'Mac, I have to. What's new?' I then made 2 fart noises and coughed 3 times. They roared. Uncle Barney came over and said, 'I got a new pair of pants.' I said, 'How do they fit?' And he said, 'I don't know. I can't get them on. I have 5 penises.' The rim shot went off in my mind. I did a take and held it, just like the comic had. The room was alive to me, the relatives laughing. Grandpa went to the doctor. The doctor said, 'Julius, we'll need a sample of your urine, blood, and stool.' He said, 'Fine, take my underwear.' Pow! Huge laugh. I was out of jokes. What a family. You've been a great family.
Oh my gosh, so good. So good.
It is so good.
I'm glad we were muted because we were howling. My daughter was howling as well.
Yes, why would I want to hear laughs while doing that? You know.
Well, no, they interrupt.
No, it's all right.
No, and you did this you were in An Evening Without the Catskills when we did it, and you did this routine. Have you seen Billy Crystal do this?
I've actually not seen the whole thing. I've seen clips of it on TV, but I've not seen this part.
Yeah.
But I've seen other parts. But it's so great. It's just his storytelling is so great, and I've loved Billy Crystal also since he was on Saturday Night Live.
Yeah.
Early '80s, and my sister.
Yeah, that I think that incredible season where he and Chris Guest and all those.
Yeah.
He was
Mark
just
Short. Yeah. Yeah. So since then, I've sort of been in love.
Amazing.
Yeah.
Well, I want to bring Leah back on.
Yes.
Yes, and
Yeah.
determined not to be over-prepared this time. We're determined to be sharp. And say thank you to Tom Shotkin and say farewell to him.
Farewell.
He'll be back. But, you know, it's interesting because he talked about the Catskills, and I don't know if you have connection to the Catskills or to Billy Crystal or to any of, I mean, it sounds, that joke that your dad told is straight up out of Catskills.
Yeah. I don't think my parents ever vacationed there, but they worked there at the Concord. And I mean, I don't have specific stories of them seeing comedians, but I do know that their stories were very funny and usually involved serving old men at big tables who said, "I would like a prune juice and hot water." The thing that
on vacation. No.
Because you have to keep it moving. That's what I remember of that.
Yeah. Well, what's interesting is that sort of at the same time that the Catskills were in their heyday, was sort of, there was this bridge happening, you know, these ba-dum-bum-tsh comedians. You also had this kind of underground stuff happening in the clubs in New York and elsewhere. And I said this during rehearsal. I was like, wow, when I think of who do I want to play Lenny Bruce, I think immediately of Leah Walton. And Lenny Bruce was Jewish, and we don't think of him as a Jewish comic necessarily. I think we think of him mostly as, you know, somebody who challenged the establishment and, you know, was arrested multiple times. But he does a really, really wonderful, you know, just as Jon Stewart and Billy Crystal kind of investigate their heritage, Lenny Bruce does it in his own, well, I was going to say inimitable way, but it's going to be imitable through Leah Walton. So here's Leah Walton with a Lenny Bruce routine.
Dig. I'm Jewish. Count Basie's Jewish. Ray Charles is Jewish. Eddie Cantor's Goyish. B'nai B'rith is Goyish. Hadassah, Jewish. Marine Corps, heavy Goyim, dangerous. If you live in New York or any other big city, you are Jewish. It doesn't matter if you're Catholic. If you live in New York, you're Jewish. If you live in Butte, Montana, you're going to be Goyish even if you're Jewish. Kool-Aid is Goyish. Evaporated milk is Goyish even if the Jews invented it. Chocolate is Jewish and fudge is Goyish. Fruit salad is Jewish. Lime jello is Goyish. Lime soda is very Goyish. Pumpernickel is Jewish, and as you know, white bread is very Goyish. Instant potatoes, Goyish. Black cherry soda is very Jewish. Macaroons are very Jewish. Italians are all Jews. Irishmen who have rejected their religion are Jews. Eugene O'Neill, Jewish. Dylan Thomas, Jewish. Mouths are very Jewish. And bosoms. Baton twirling, very Goyish. Celebrate is a Goyish word. Observe is a Jewish word. Mr. and Mrs. Walsh are celebrating Christmas with Major Thomas Moreland, USAF, retired, while Mr. and Mrs. Bromberg observed Hanukkah with Goldie and Arthur Schneidel from Kenosha, New York.
So good. So good. Man, whoever is playing Lenny Bruce in The Marvelous Mrs. Maisel has nothing on you.
Thank you.
Now, was Lenny Bruce a thing for you at all? Was that
And not so much growing up, but definitely as I got older. And I think like one of the things that I love about him, or just like maybe humor and a lot of Jewish humor in general, is the fact that like the punch happens because things are funny.
Yeah.
You know, like Lenny Bruce made people laugh, and because he disarmed them in these certain ways, he was able to do and make some huge statements. So then people really paid attention and got him into big trouble, and he lost all his money and all this stuff. But because he let us in some ways, he could sort of like shove other stuff in our faces.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And I think that there's something Jewish about that.
Yeah.
Like, you know, that's why we have our religious texts, and we debate them and scratch our heads over them and fight over them, and then laugh about it all too.
Yeah, it's hard to imagine George Carlin without the influence of Lenny Bruce. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Carlin is very, very Irish, but he's a Jewish comedian. You know what I mean? You know what I mean? Like his cadence, you know what yeah.
Yeah.
Amazing.
And the dangerous stuff comes because we've all been like happy enough to laugh.
Yeah.
It's like boom.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, and I mentioned this earlier, is that, you know, when we talk about chapter 18, verse 12, and for me, Jewish humor exists at that place where comedy and tragedy are both happening at the same time. That it's like, here's this miracle that's happening, but it's also really depressing. And the ability to hold both of those things in your hand at the same time and find humor in it is really magic, I think.
Yeah.
I'm going to ask you to pivot. And because at the same time that Lenny Bruce, thank you. What a great back to the outfit. I love it. While Lenny Bruce was doing this sort of humor in the nightclubs, there were still other Jewish comedians who were kind of creating these characters. And, you know, we look later to like Gilda Radner, or look back to Fanny Bryce, etc., all of whom created characters that were based on this some sort of background of their Jewish identity. There was a comedian named Betty Walker, who she was big in the kind of, not quite the vinyl revolution, but she had a lot of albums out.
Mm-hmm.
She would occasionally appear on talk shows and like what's his name, the big one. Oh, Ed Sullivan. Ed Sullivan. Things like that. But she had this. She had created this persona of this Jewish mother, and she was always on the phone with her best friend Seal. So to take us there, I'm going to give the screen back to Leah Walton. Thank you.
Hello, Seal. Yeah, it's me. Yeah, how are you? Listen, Seal. Yeah, that's why I'm calling. Guess who I met yesterday? Guess. You're gonna fall down. You're gonna fall. Seal, you remember that Jenny? Oh, you remember her. She used to say her husband gave her things because he loved her, but we all knew it was from guilt. Yeah. Oh, Seal, dear. She's the one that was such a hypochondriac. Yeah, that's right. You know what I said to her? I said, Jenny, with you being such a hypochondriac, I bet you must cook with penicillin. Well, I have a sense of humor, Seal. I didn't mean anything. No, I don't talk to her anymore. Yeah, you know, Seal, I'll tell you the truth. No, nothing ever happened with us. You know I'm an honest person. I would tell you. Frankly speaking, you know, don't let it go any further. But when she lived in the neighborhood and she was a local call, you know, okay then. But confidentially, she's not a 4-unit friend to me. No, you know, like I always say, live and let live. Listen, Seal, are you still taking a course on child psychology? You are. Good. Then listen, Seal, dear, I'd like your advice on my opinion. Last night, my Marilyn and my Chickie were playing, and my Chickie got a hold of a stapling machine. Yeah, no. A stapling machine, yeah. And my chickie took a hold of my Marilyn's finger, and she put it right into the stapling. But wait a minute, Seal. She pressed down. So this is what I wanted to ask you, Seal. Psychologically speaking, between you and me, Seal, do you think my chickie resents my Marilyn, or do you think she's mechanically inclined?
Yay!
So good. So good.
That's so awesome.
Such a great piece.
No, indeed. And she was, you know, is not a name that comes up that much in comic history, but there were this whole raft of albums during that time, like You Don't Have to Be Jewish. The whole world is smiling when you're Jewish. All of these things that were just little tiny bits, and she was one of the featured, she was one of the featured players. She was amazing.
Yeah, those records are so great. I do remember my father and I listening to a lot of Alan Sherman. That was a big one growing up. And yeah, she was just a great voice in that too.
No, indeed.
Yeah.
Sure.
Well, we are going to say thank you so much, Leah. We're going to say goodbye to Leah and bring Tom Shotkin back for one more thing. Oh, yeah. And let's go ahead and bring Tom back. Then, okay, there he is. Here, back again. And, it's interesting. You mentioned in your opening being reminded of being, like Woody Allen in Annie Hall. Scandal noted. But you're going to close us out tonight with, I think, just one of the best jokes that's ever been told. And it's a Woody Allen joke. Because his stand-up changed. It really changed things and took the sort of like understanding of Jewish identity into a new. So all the scandals noted.
Thank you.
Here we go. Tom Shotkin, take it away.
I shot a moose once. I was hunting upstate New York and I shot a moose. I strap him on the fender of my car and I'm driving home along the West Side Highway, but what I didn't realize was the bullet did not penetrate the moose. It just creased the scalp, knocking him unconscious. And I'm driving through the Holland Tunnel. The moose wakes up. So I'm driving with a live moose on my fender. The moose is signaling for a turn, There's a law in New York State against driving with a conscious moose on your fender. Tuesdays, Thursdays, and Saturday. And I'm very panicky. And then it hits me. Some friends of mine are having a costume party. I'll go, I'll take the moose, I'll ditch him at the party. It won't be my responsibility. So I drive up to the party and I knock on the door. The moose is next to me. My host comes to the door. I say, hello, the Solomons. We enter. The moose mingles, did very well, scored. Two guys were trying to sell him insurance for an hour and a half. 12 o'clock comes. They give out prizes for the best costume of the night. First prize goes to the Berkowitzes, a married couple dressed as a moose. The moose comes in second. The moose is furious. He and the Berkowitzes lock antlers in the living room. They knock each other unconscious. Now, I figure it's my chance. I grab the moose, strap him onto my fender, shoot back to the roads, but I got the Berkowitzes. So I'm driving along with two Jewish people on my fender, and there's a law in New York State, Tuesdays, Thursdays, and especially Saturdays. The following morning, the Berkowitzes wake up in the woods in a moose suit. Mr. Berkowitz is shot, stuffed, and mounted at the New York Athletic Club. And the joke is on them because it's restricted. So that's it.
You're so awesome.
Oh, so good. Good material.
I'm grateful to you for being here. I'm grateful to Leah for being here. And we're going to say farewell to you right now so we can do some final announcements. But thank you, Tom Shotkin. And thank all of you for being with us around our dining room table to talk about the history of Jewish humor in America. Remember, June 8th, Event to Do Schmancy. join us. It's going to be so much fun. Our studio producer, as always, is Ben Levan. Our in-house producer is Lily Greer. Our sponsor is my sister's cute new pug, Vito Childs, who says, on behalf of dogs everywhere, we're so glad you're home. Our guests have been Tom Shotkin and Leah Walton. And be kind to yourselves, be kind to each other, and we'll see you next week. Thank you so much.
Good night.